Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today. We're back with a little Bethesda drama. So just a couple of days ago, we sat down on the channel to talk about Mick Gordon. For those who are not caught up on the situation, number one, you could go check out that video, but the too long didn't read is that this is a situation dating back to an open letter submitted by executive producer Marty Stratton over at id Software, where there was a big controversy surrounding the Doom official soundtrack releasing without Mick Gordon, who is the composer of the Doom soundtrack's involvement. And so now here we are where we saw Mick Gordon's side of the story. And one thing I called for in that video was that Bethesda needs to reply, because the difference maker between, say, Mick Gordon and what happened with Helena Taylor and Platinum Games is that Helena Taylor came out with a pretty bold claim. A lot of people believed her in good faith, but then the receipts started to come out that contradicted her story. Now here with Bethesda and Mick Gordon told his side of the story after Marty said his side of the story on Reddit, and we had receipts with Mick Gordon. It's a 58-minute read, again, that I do recommend you do yourself if you are so inclined to comment on the situation. But Bethesda has now responded to this drama, and I can't really say this is a good response at all across the board. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here, you're into Bethesda news, information, discussions, all this type of stuff, these breaking conversations, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. I apologize for all the webcam videos as of late, but just I was grinding podcasts today. I'm like, why bother with the setup? Like, let's just get right into it. So let's begin by reading Bethesda's post, which is, by the way, now pinned on their Twitter account. Like, it's the first thing you see. No promotional material. This is the first thing you see. And it reads, "The recent post by Mick Gordon both mischaracterized and misrepresented the team at id Software, the development of Doom Eternal, Marty Stratton, and Chad Mossholder with a one-sided and unjust account of an irreparable professional relationship. We are aware of all the details and history in this matter and unequivocally support Marty, Chad, and the team at id Software. We deject the distortion of the truth and the selective presentation of incomplete, quote, facts, end quote. We stand ready with full and complete documented evidence to disclose in an appropriate venue as needed. The statements posted online have incited harassment and threats of violence against Marty, Chad, and the id Software team. Any threats or harassment directed towards members of our team will be met with swift and appropriate action to protect their health and safety. We remain incredibly proud of id's previous collaborations with Mick Gordon and ask that fans refrain from reaching conclusions based on his account and, more importantly, from attacking any of the individuals mentioned on either side, including Marty, Chad, or Mick." Now, let me just start off on one small positive note before I go off on a million one other things. I like the call for peace here. I think that's really important. And this is something that's been emphasized, at least on Mick's side of the fence here. I find it very interesting that that was never pointed out, because Mick did say after posting his letter, which it was not buried in the replies, it was a separate tweet that, as you can see here, 4,000 plus retweets, 47,000 plus likes, Twitters and everything, but it got out there. He said, "To those taking action against the game, please spare a thought for all the talented people who worked incredibly hard to make the game you enjoyed. The team's work, which drew critical acclaim, deserves celebration, and their efforts should not be the target of a protest." So he's not calling for, boycotting. He's not saying tear down id. He's not saying going after anyone. He is just telling his side of the story, which is absolutely his right, to my knowledge. But what I find here that is really unfortunate is that there are threats being thrown around now on both sides. Id's getting some, Mick's getting some, Chad's getting some, people of the id Software team in general are getting some, and it's just a really messy situation. Now, as I said, I find this statement to not be enough. Why is that? Number one, let's start off with the clear corporate approach that they took here, which I believe was a mistake. They say here that we stand ready with full and complete documented evidence to disclose in an appropriate venue as needed. That is them saying they're ready to go to court if need be. They are ready to rock and roll. And let's be real, let's learn from the Helena Taylor situation that everyone reacted to. We do not know what Bethesda has. We do not, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. It could be that they have the undeniable evidence that Mick hid from us because we chose to believe Mick Gordon. We also could recognize they may not have much because Mick did, in his article over on Medium, which you should check out, and as I showed in my video, posted a lot of visible, tangible evidence. Things that you could see, screenshots of emails, interactions, files, true, tangible evidence that allows the consumer, that allows the viewers to come to their own conclusion. And Bethesda's not presenting that. So as much as I want to sit here and believe that Bethesda does have their employees' best interests in mind, that Bethesda truly wants the best solution here, and that they do have the right thing in mind with their evidence, only one side is showing said evidence. Only one side is. The other side is not. And I find it strange because when this whole situation began, it was handled on an open letter in Reddit covering the OST situation. And there was transparency about dialogue there. The reality is, for Bethesda, they need to recognize that if they really want to have us believe them, they need to show us whatever this full and complete documented evidence is. But the way they've approached this, where they said it's a one-sided account, they also mentioned it's unjust, but they mentioned also a one-sided account. It's his story of the events that happened. Like, it's going to be one-sided. That is his right to tell that side because Marty told his. And provided what Mick has said is true across all his receipts, the agreement was to do a joint statement across Mick and Marty. And supposedly in the Medium, it's covered that Marty stepped in front of Mick and did an open letter that did drag Mick into a negative light, and he said impacted his career. We don't know to what extent. We don't know how badly. We know he got work, as I covered in my last video. He is doing the soundtrack for Atomic Heart. But what we have to recognize here is that the first shot was fired in full by id Software in a lot of ways. Marty said, I didn't work on this. id Software fired back. And then Mick took his time and put together everything in an undeniable report here that was, I think, so strong. Bethesda had to respond. If they continued to bury their head, it would have been an awful look for them. But also, who knows what could have came out of it legally if they did not acknowledge it occurring. Now, I do feel bad for Marty, Chad, and the id Software team. I probably should have said that up front when more people are listening to the video, but I do feel bad for them because the situation's messy. You never want to see it get to this level where fans are getting involved, being white knights for one side or the other, and sending threats and making game developers fear their lives because they dared to make Doom Eternal and not even be associated with the situation here. It is really unfortunate. I do like that Bethesda is stating they want to protect their team here, but Bethesda needs to come out with the receipts at the end of the day. And they have to have expected this response, which is, we have to believe Mick. Like, we're learning as an industry together. You can't just, and world in general, since Twitter came about, don't get me wrong, that you can't just leap on to everyone's back and immediately be like, you're at fault, guilty by community. Like, the court's opinion, the public opinion has stated that you are wrong. Therefore, no matter what happens, you are wrong. We're finally slowly inching our way out of that type of behavior, although I think it'll forever be around. But Bethesda has to recognize that for us to really start to sway and say their favor, we need to see what undeniable evidence they have. And what is really sad about all of this, and what I'd love to see, although I doubt it'll ever happen now, is some kind of reparation, some kind of happy ending, not court, but trying to mediate and find a way where when your next Doom game comes around, like Mick Gordon defined the whole soundscape for that series, in my opinion. Like, without his music, I think Doom feels a lot different. Not that it'll sound bad in future games, but I feel you want to have Mick's talents on board. And one thing that we have to acknowledge here is whatever evidence Bethesda decides to put to the forefront here, there are a couple of things that are potential, quote, I'm saying potential gaps for Mick's argument. Number one, we don't know the contractual nature of Bethesda and Mick's agreement. For example, Mick said like, hey, they took samples of my tracks and they used them in the full game. If Mick signed an agreement that said you just have the right to use what I produce, that's all there is to it. It's shitty by Bethesda, but that is their right to use that stuff. Again, they should pay for the completed work and they should make note of it and communicate that. And they can, if this were to be the actual legal case, do that type of shit. But at least to my knowledge, I'm clearly no legal expert, nor am I offering that type of legal counsel. But to my knowledge, they would be able to work that type of angle. It's just, again, not a good look here. Same thing with crunch. Some studios will say, we have a no crunch policy, but you can't control what someone does outside of the studio. Now, Mick made it clear that there were a lot of deadlines, unrealistic ones, set for Doom Eternal and the soundtrack, to the point where he had to crunch through Easter, not see his family, sleep under his desk to complete the soundtrack for the game. Or it may have been just the official soundtrack and like his work on it. I'm sorry if I'm mixing it up. The point being is he had to crunch through Easter, and we don't know the ins and outs, the back and forths, like the conversation a month leading up to it, where was there a moment he could have worked on it a little bit more? Was there not? Bethesda, obviously, as he showed, did not respond to a request for a delay. I'm just trying to keep an open mind, not because I want Bethesda to be right here, but this is where we're at an inflection point as a gaming community. And we're so accustomed to react, that I always try to emphasize, at least within my own community. I know we're not large by any stretch of the imagination compared to the globe, but I at least try to have the impact of, let's analyze, let's give our thoughts. We're completely entitled to give our opinion on what's happening before our eyes. That's not a problem. But let's take a good look at what's happening here. But let's not jump down Bethesda's throat. Let's not jump down Mick's throat. I am more in Mick's camp because Mick has provided the evidence. But that doesn't mean it's impossible that something is being hidden here. And I probably wouldn't be saying that, but just with the Helena Taylor situation, I was quick to leap in and be like, color me shocked that Nintendo is trying to save a quick buck when they have more money than God. Color me shocked that voice actors are being paid pennies. But then you learn the offers, the evidence starts to come out, and you're like, okay, the offer was there. She just wanted an extreme amount of money that's not realistic for today's video game voice actors, especially Bayonetta, which I like Bayonetta as a character, but she is not, a Zelda, Super Mario, where I know they're not fully voiced, but you understand what I'm saying, that they're not that level of iconic. So with that in mind, I think I'd just be ignorant to forget what's happened in the vicinity of these events. So we'll continue to track it, of course, here, but this is Bethesda's response. And they say they're aware of all the details and the history, but one thing I did mention in my video is that I think it was Bethesda's duty here to mediate, at least from what we saw from Mick's side of the story. I think it was their job to mediate when things were getting out of hand. You don't have to control what id does, their workflow, their structure, their approach as a team, but when Mick has to go through Bethesda to negotiate contracts, when it is failing on that, which we did see visible evidence of, that should be a sign, okay, we need to be a little more involved on this particular angle of the business, or more available to Mick. Again, we'll see how this develops. Right now, it looks like Bethesda saying we're ready to go to court if you are. I'm sure that Mick will respond to this. In what way? I'm very curious. I don't expect more receipts to drop on all of this stuff because I just feel like Bethesda didn't say anything that would make it where Mick has more to present. But this could be one of those Epic versus Apple situations developing where we're going to see some really interesting stuff pour out if this does go through the legal process, because that was probably one of the most fascinating legal disputes we've seen in gaming. I know there's been a lot in the years, but that would be something interesting because Bethesda is a typically cagey company, and to protect themselves, they would have to be more open. So I'm keen on seeing where this all goes. Now, I shouldn't say keen, like I'm excited to see legal dispute, but you get what I'm saying. Like as a enthusiast, I'm very interested to see how this is all handled here. But of course, I like the call for peace. That's about the best I can say for it. Otherwise, it's not very great. I'm curious as to your thoughts. Do you agree or disagree? You're more than welcome to fall on whatever side of the camp you want. I certainly understand why people would want to think the best of Bethesda here, but you have to remember they are a corporation, they are a company, and they're going to do what's in their best interest first and foremost. And this does read like a corporate statement more than something that, would indicate that they have a better grip on the situation, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm looking forward to seeing your thoughts. Other than that, be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the hell out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.